What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on yet another Wingman University video. My name is Nate Hibbert, and today we are continuing on this case studies topic or series of videos that I've been putting out, and we're going to be talking about deal structuring today for local businesses. And I guess technically this doesn't have to be done for local businesses. That's where I've had the most success, but this really can be looked at as just the print-on-demand fundraiser way of deal structuring or running your print-on-demand business. So there's an absolute ton I can say about this topic. It's something I've been very passionate about the last 3 years, something that I've had a lot of success with, and something I want to encourage more people to try. And so I think after we get done with these case studies, that's going to be my main focus, is really talking about how can you use print on demand outside of just the organic traffic or running ads and kind of the internet way of doing things, which is great. We're still doing that in our business. That's definitely what Steven is focused on, making more win-win situations in that lane. But for me personally, I love the networking. I love getting out and actually seeing people and working with businesses and creating win-wins that way. And I think the word fundraiser is a good kind of in for a lot of the businesses that I want to work with. There's just churches and nonprofits, but also other people who might need fundraising, like schools, for an example. So in this video, it's going to be a little bit more general advice. It's not going to directly relate to the case study, but I want to put out this video first before I do an exact breakdown of this case study that we're on, talking about the theater company and exactly what that deal looked like, talking about the actual numbers and everything. I think giving this general advice beforehand will give you guys kind of a look into what's been going on and why I structured that deal that way. So like I said, 4 things that we're going to talk about in this video: the pros and cons to start off of doing print on demand this way as a fundraiser, but also I wanted to just share some like general advice, things that I've learned doing a lot of these fundraiser type print on demand deals, and then ending with the different phases that you will find yourself in, or at least that I found myself in, running a business this way, going from trying to get your feet wet and just learning to finding people who will spread the word of what you're doing, so doing jobs for word of mouth reference, and then also like scaling. And I think it's important to break down what we're doing into different phases. We started to do that with some of the Merch by Amazon specific content, talking about how to run a account over there. I guess that works for Merch by Amazon and KDP. That first phase, we were really encouraging you guys to just list 100 things or make 100 listings, just because you'll start to figure out some of the mechanics of how things work over there and understand your own workflow, which is really important. But you don't want to do that forever. You don't want to just constantly be focusing on getting up as many listings as possible. And so phase 2 of that is kind of figuring out where the data you've collected from making those 100 listings is directing you and what best fits your skill set. So similar thing here with trying to do print on demand fundraising type deals. You don't always want to approach every deal exactly the same, especially when you're starting out. Like, you kind of just need a way to get your feet wet and then go into those other phases. So we're going to break that down at the end, but let's jump into some pros and cons first. So from my point of view, there are a ton of pros of doing a print-on-demand based fundraiser. I went ahead and just picked 5, and these are actually 5 from the last client that I talked to, like the 5 that I brought to their attention because it fit their position the best. But this does not mean like this is the only 5 that I would talk about, or even like the best 5 to talk about. One thing about doing print-on-demand fundraising type deals is each one is pretty specific to the customer. And that's the way that I like to do it. I wish that I could give general advice is like, here's the best thing to do for everyone, but that's kind of the reason I like doing the print on demand fundraising, is because we can custom fit it so much to a certain audience or a certain client, depending on what their needs are. And so to quickly touch on these 5, the first one is no upfront money for the product. So I still do charge an upfront fee just to pay for my time of setting everything up and the knowledge that I've put into this. So you want to make that clear. Don't say there's no upfront charge, period, because then when you go to charge them a fee for your time, they might seem a little skeptical on that. But you can tell them that there's no upfront charge for actual products, so they don't have to buy the shirts that they'll be printing on, which is a really big bonus for them. One other like footnote I'll make about that though is if they want samples, and depends on how much you're charging them up front, but that might be also something you want to charge them for. If they want samples beforehand, they have to pay for that, or you can deal structure around it, but you don't want to just say no upfront fees, which is something I've done, and then they want samples and they want to do all this extra extra stuff and then you're like, I poured so much time into this and I didn't get paid for it, it kind of hurts a little bit. So make sure if you're saying there's no upfront money, that you end it with for the products that you'll be giving your customer. The second pro or benefit, as I presented this to the last client I was talking to, is that they didn't have to deal with any returns. So this one was pretty specific to the customer that I was speaking to. They did a walkathon where they had people wearing shirts and then someone wanted to return their shirt. It was just kind of being a pain in their side. So not something you'd probably normally run into, but I just thought I would throw this benefit in, is that they don't have to deal with the returns. So if there are any returns, our warehouse will deal with it. Our people will deal with it. They don't have to hear about it. They can send it back and talk to our customer service, which was actually the third benefit that I want to talk about, or pro as I'm saying for this list, is they don't have to deal with any customer service calls. So yes, it will be all online, and you might have one or two people who contact you, but you can send them to us and we will deal with the customer service. Now, that depends on what platform you're on. If it's on Amazon, then you can send them to Amazon's customer service team because they're great. But if you're on Shopify, like we are with this deal, then I am doing the customer service, or someone in our team will do the customer service. So just be aware of that. If you're using Merch by Amazon, completely cool. Tell them to use the customer service. The customer service is great. But if you're not using Amazon, then you will have to think about the customer service. If it's another platform, you'd probably want to check in with their customer service to see how they would handle things. And if it's yourself, then you have to be prepared for some angry emails or calls, depending on what information you put on your Shopify store. That in itself could probably be a video, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to the fourth pro, which is there is no inventory that they have to store. Now, this was a big one, and again, focused on this client just because they had done media blasts before where they're like, hey, we had this funny saying or this funny thing and we made this product around it. If you guys want to support us, anywhere inside of the US, we'll ship a shirt to you. And they had some of those kind of blow up in their face where they ended up paying a bunch for products up front and then didn't sell them. And now they're not only did they lose out money, but they just have all these shirts that they didn't want to store anywhere. So they're giving them to like people who come in and volunteer and all that stuff. But it was just kind of something that was junking up their storage room. So I wanted to make sure that I said there's no inventory. You don't have to purchase any of this stuff. It's not going to go into your warehouse. This is going to be handled by us and our team or the people that we're partnered with, which is Amazon. And then the last one, the fifth benefit or pro, once again, specific to this client, was they didn't have to process any payments. So that's again something that they've had headache with in the past, just because I've had a little bit of a relationship with them. I heard about some of the previous events that they had going on, and they had a problem with processing some payments. They had a certain company reject a bunch of the donations that they got, so they had to actually go back and call all of the people who donated money, and it was just a little bit embarrassing for them, like, hey, we know you donated all this money, but your card declined because our payments were messed up, so now we have to go back and ask you if you want to make that donation again. So a little bit of an awkward situation, and so I was just saying there's no processing payments that you guys will have to do. We will handle all that. If there's any problems, we will make those awkward calls, which I've never had a problem like that. I've never even heard about a problem like that. But again, the beauty of creating a flexible fundraiser is that I can kind of pick out the benefits that I think will hit their pain points the best and present that to them. And so again, that is just kind of 5 random ones, but I thought I'd share a little bit of the story behind why I picked those 5 ones, and just so you guys can see how flexible these benefits can be, especially if you're just walking in and want to present this idea to people. Having some relationship with them beforehand and understanding their pain points is a great way to approach this type of deal. But not everything is rainbow and unicorns, and print on demand and DTG are not the only option out there. They're not always the best option. They're sometimes not even a good option. And so I do want to talk about some of the cons of print on demand and some things that you might run into that are walls that will just completely shut down a deal because you can't provide those types of services. So the first thing I want to talk about is you'll have to kind of educate the people that you're working with. So I see this as a con because it can be confusing. I've tried to put up like visual aids and have a presentation of like, this is exactly what DTG is, but screen printing has been around for so much longer that people kind of understand that, especially if they've been running any type of organization that does any screen printing related fundraisers or events or whatever, they understand that world. So when you're trying to bring this new technology to them, it's going to sometimes take 2 or 3 times explaining exactly what is going on kind of behind the scenes for them to wrap their heads around it and see why this is such a great opportunity, or why it's a great opportunity for some people. That kind of goes back to me not being a great salesman though. I just don't enjoy the process of explaining exactly what DTG is, how print on demand works, and all of those things, which is something I'm getting better at, but for me that is a con because I just don't like doing it, and it can cause some extra confusion between you and the client. So the second con that I run into quite often is for the people that I'm working with, either a school or church or nonprofit or whatever. They want to do a big event and they want to do a large order of the shirts that I have shown them or they've seen samples of, but they don't understand that the reason print on demand works so well is because their customers are the ones spending the money to produce the item. So usually production cost is much higher than if you were going to get the same product from a screen printer, because a screen printer can do a large quantity, and actually the larger the quantity, the lower the price for each one. That is not the case for screen printing or print on demand. Every product is going to be the exact same price. So if that hoodie cost you $15, every hoodie after that is also going to cost you $15. As to where a screen printer, if you're doing, an order, usually hoodies are like 25. You can't even do less than 25 through screen printing. So you'll have to do the 25, and then anything above that, usually there's like milestones that you can hit. So like 100 or 500 or 1,000, the price keeps dropping per unit cost. So you can get hoodies for, $5 to $6 even, or even less than that, depending on the quantity that you're ordering. So that kind of relates to the first point that I said you have to educate, the people that you're working with how this all works. But that can be a con, and something that print on demand just isn't meant for is doing large amounts of items for them to have at an event. Now, there's nothing wrong with combining screen printing and print on demand. So if they are having a large event, usually what I do is find a screen printer local to them that I can ask a few questions to see if I want to work with them, and then give them the job and have those products, whether they be shirts or sweatshirts or whatever, for them at that large event, but also supplementing the online or people who just can't make it to that event who still want to support them by buying whatever apparel it is, so they can have the online option still available with the same product. So like I said, print on demand isn't perfect for every situation, but by combining screen printing and print on demand together, you can usually cover all of your bases, which is pretty sweet. But we don't do any screen printing. I don't have my go-to screen printer. Usually I just try to work with someone local. Not only will they usually sometimes try to work with you to give you a better deal, but the shipping is going to be a lot less. And so that's why I don't just have one screen printer that I always go to, because shipping will kind of kill a lot of the profit. So if you find someone local who's good and trusted, or even if the nonprofit already knows someone local, that works out even better. So you can work with them. The nonprofit's going to be comfortable with that relationship. They might even go and pick up the shirt, so the shipping cost is zero, which is always a benefit. So something to think about if they are doing a large event. Don't just say, I can't help you with that, but ask them like, hey, is there a screen printer that you guys use? I can send them over the files, or I'll find one for you and we can try and work out a deal where everyone wins in that situation. But moving on to the third con of just doing a print on demand fundraiser is it can be hard to do special products. So we're working with a dog company right now, or a dog nonprofit, where they want a certain specific product for their dogs to wear around as well. And I don't have a supplier for that currently. So I had to tell them, like, let me figure this out. And that's something I'm currently in the process of figuring out if I can get this certain product printed on. But what I might have to do is go find a screen printer or some type of private label item that we can add our logos to and supplement them that way. So it won't be the print on demand model, but they will still have those products for the event that they're actually putting on, and they could resell them online, and we could stock them in our warehouse, because our warehouse allows us to do that, which is pretty cool. So there are, not everything can be print on demand. There's a ton of new stuff out there. Even jewelry is kind of the latest thing popping up that you can do print on demand on, which is really cool. But you won't always be able to find the specific item that they're looking for. And just because I like to do kind of a full service and help them out with any products that they're trying to sell, I'll usually do the extra footwork that goes into finding certain special products. And usually that's just me asking my network how I can get this done, which is awesome. But it is going to be more legwork. And if it's a brand new customer, sometimes that can kill the deal. They're like, I want this very specific thing. And I'm like, well, I can't provide that for you. And if it's a brand new customer, depending on how big their audience is and all that stuff, sometimes I just say, here's someone else you can talk to about this, but it's not going to be me who's going to be able to provide that for you. So that can be a con, something that kind of kills deals as well. But jumping into the fourth con, and this is something that has just bitten me the last 2 years that I want to share with you guys, a con of print on demand can be the shipping times in Q4. The last 2 years I've had things happen in Q4 that have had to do with the shipping promising to get there by a certain date and it doesn't get there, which is not great for customer service and providing a quality experience. But especially this last year, I had some nightmares where instead of trying to figure out the shipping nightmare, I just went ahead and paid a local screen printer to remake the products that were supposed supposed to be there, at that time. That way I just didn't have to deal with the shipping anymore. So it cost us a lot of money out of pocket, but the client was happy, so the quality experience was there that time, but it was just a nightmare. So not necessarily always the shipping is a problem, but it is something to think about and kind of having a plan B if the products don't get there, especially for photo shoots or video productions or whatever is going on. Just always having a plan B for print on demand, because you're not always in full control. Sometimes something happens at the warehouse, sometimes it's something with the shipping. There are just unforeseen things that can happen because you're not the one, screen printing them and sending them out of your garage or your basement or whatever. So just having this plan B of, sometimes things go wrong. I always have to be able to think on my feet, and having screen printers ready to go, wherever you have your big clients is usually a good idea. Just having that contact person there, telling them what you're doing, and just like, a rainy day, can I rely on you guys to print this exact product with this exact logo? Doing that footwork up front might seem a little unnecessary, but it has saved me more than once at this point. So I just wanted to share again, just a con of doing print on demand is that sometimes you have to do some extra legwork just because your systems may fail. It's not always, usually I would say 99% of the time it works out perfectly, but because I really care about our customers and our clients that we're working with, I like to do that extra footwork and make sure that I did everything that I possibly could in that situation to help them out. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes there are clients who are disappointed and the relationship ends or deals break up, but it's kind of part of doing business, and as long as you do your best, I don't think anyone can fault you for that. So that's just my little warning and my list of cons. Again, there are a lot more, but they're kind of specific to certain situations. So those were just some that came to mind as I was making this list. But this video is getting pretty long, so let's go ahead and move into general advice. So I've got 4 points here. I'm going to try to kind of zoom through these, as like I said, the video is getting a little bit long, but these are all tied together. So things that I've learned just from having a lot of like cold call and awkward conversations starting out relationships. So some advice that I've put together kind of for myself that I wanted to share here as well. Usually on the first meeting, my only goal there is to figure out their pain points. So I usually tell them like, I'm going to have to meet with you a few times to figure out exactly how this would work. And the first meeting always is just around, what are your pain points? How can I help make this experience better for you and your customers? And not only is that great for that relationship and kind of a good way to build that trust there, but also if you're going to do other clients in that vein, so if you're working with a dog shelter and you ask them that question, now every other dog shelter that you go to, you have some idea of what their possible pain points could be, and that just helps kind of building on that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the phases, but that is definitely the first thing that I try to do, is figure out their pain points. Second kind of general advice that I want to give you is charge an upfront fee. This is for your time, for you putting in the energy and effort and using your knowledge from past things. Even if it's my knowledge, you want to get paid for that, and that allows you to be taken a little bit more seriously. As a younger person who's walked into a lot of nonprofits and just said, I'll do all this stuff and it will be completely free, I just want to get paid on the back end, it looks a bit skeptical, and people don't take you as seriously as if when you charge a setup fee. To go alongside of that is kind of the third general advice that I wanted to give, which is setting a deadline for when you need information from them. Usually when I've said, okay, this is how we're going to work together, I need this fee, the next thing I talk about is I need these files from you by this time. Or if I'm creating a original piece of artwork for them, I need a yes or no on this artwork by this time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to move on to other things, and this is going to get pushed back. So not saying I'll drop them completely, but usually having some deadline for them is super important, especially nonprofits who are usually understaffed and have a lot of stuff going on. It's easy to not be a priority to them, even though you're trying to help them out. So a setup fee and a deadline are two great things to kind of make yourself a priority and get the things from them that you need at a certain time. And the last kind of general advice that I want to give is having a contact person. So usually when I'm going to these nonprofits, that's the last question that I end out on, is like, hey, if I have any questions, who's the person that I can talk to and get an answer as soon as possible? Or who's the person kind of in charge of making these decisions? Can I get their contact information so I can just reach out to them? I don't always get it. Sometimes the nonprofits are set up to kind of shield that person from just everyone having their contact information. But usually that's a question that I like to end out on, even if it's the person at the front desk. desk, if they can give me an answer much quicker than the person who makes the decision, then that's usually what I try to do. So trying to pick that apart, and every nonprofit school and organization is set up a little bit differently. So as you focus in on certain ones, you'll start to learn, the title of that person or exactly who is making these decisions, and not necessarily the coach, it's the head of the booster club. All those types of things you'll just start to learn as you go out and talk more and more. But those are 4 great tips for anyone who wants to try this out, and I'll run through them really quickly. Figure out what their pain points are, charging an upfront fee, setting a deadline, and finding your contact person. All great things to do when you're trying to do a print-on-demand fundraiser. All right, we're on the final stretch here, and I just wanted to quickly talk about phases. This is more like a theory and a thing that I'm working on. It's not an exact science, and it's not always going to apply to everyone, but just to give yourself some milestones as you're trying this out, some things to think about, and to structure deals slightly differently as you're starting to learn more and more, which I am definitely still trying to learn as much as possible. I don't have this completely figured out. I still have a ton of failures. I still have clients that I've been working with for 8 months that are still like kind of lingering. It's not always perfect. It's not great and dandy all the time, but there is a large upside to this. And when you get to create a deal that works and everyone wins in that situation, it is a fantastic feeling that you're helping these organizations, and you're also supporting your own business, which is cool. So as you are going out and trying this, or if you're even just thinking about doing something like this, think about these different phases so that you give yourself kind of a timeline for when you want to switch from doing things maybe for free or low cost to when you're trying to really scale your business. So I've got it broken down into 3 phases, and the first phase is just learning, trying to get your feet wet. So as I've moved around a ton in the last 2 years, I've definitely been in this phase quite a bit, and that's just trying to get my feet wet, work the nonprofits, organizations, schools, whatever in that area. And I have found personally the best way to do this is just by volunteering some time. When you're volunteering, just giving your time, people are usually pretty kind to you. They'll give you more information than if you're just walking in and cold calling, or just trying to get straight to, let me help you with shirts. It's usually not a great opener, but if you're volunteering there and then they ask you what you do, then that opens a conversation. Or even if you're just volunteering and say, hey, I heard you guys have this event coming up, can I help? There's a lot more doors that have opened for me that way. As I've said in the past, umpteenth videos, I am not a great salesman, so this is kind of my way in. I volunteer, I try to give my time, I just try to be there, a reliable person who will be there at certain times, and that shows them that I'm trustworthy and someone that they can partner with. So when I get to tell them about this opportunity of doing a print-on-demand fundraiser, it usually works out a little bit better. Or even better than that, if you have a friend who works at a certain organization who you've already explained what you do and they think it'll be right for them, having someone kind of introduce you to the person who can get that done or get that job rolling is also a great strategy. And so that's kind of phase 1 of doing a print-on-demand fundraising business, is trying to get into the door of a few people and have these conversations. Even if you get shut down 10 times, that's completely fine, but getting into those conversations and talking with the people in charge and figuring out that sometimes you have to go through a board and a whole process, especially with nonprofits where they have to get a lot of approval for the things that they want to do, just starting to learn that world the same way that I kind of suggested that you learn Shopify, which is just kind of jump in and start to learn some of the back end. That's kind of what I'm suggesting here, is just getting your feet wet, talking to these nonprofits or whatever organization that you want to go after, so you can download some of that knowledge and use it every time that you approach a new organization that you want to work with. So the second phase that I see myself going through is kind of the word of mouth phase. And so this is when you've kind of dialed in a little bit the people that you want to be working with or the organizations that you have the most success with, and you want to just be doing the best job possible so that they will, by word of mouth, spread around what you're doing. I have found that a lot of nonprofits, churches, and schools are all very well connected with other churches, nonprofits, and schools, and sometimes a variety of the 3. And so doing a good job for one of them can usually lead to more work. So doing the very best that you can after you kind of have things dialed in. I guess I should say, when you're learning and just getting your feet wet, you definitely want to be open and honest about that. If it's your very first client, I would tell them, hey, this is the first time I'm trying this thing, but I have used this for my own business. I've sold shirts this way, and I just thought partnering with you would be a great opportunity. When you're doing things for word of mouth, you can also lead in with, hey, I want to do a great job for you guys, and if you know anyone else who can use an opportunity like this or a fundraiser like this, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with them and see if it's the right fit for them as well. Again, that all kinds of stems from me being a bad salesman. I love when people are introducing me to a business who's already kind of a warm call, and a relationship that I have there. It's a much much easier conversation for me to have, and a little bit more exciting than just kind of walking into a place and not knowing who to talk to or what to say or any of those things. So that's kind of my own strategy, but that's definitely the second phase that I've seen myself go through. And now I'm turning into this third phase. So there might be more phases. These phases might be changed as I talk about them and think about them more. But the third phase that I am currently in is scaling this business. So while I'm happy to talk about doing a print-on-demand fundraiser for anyone who's interested, I am really trying to narrow in the exact type of organization that I want to work with. Who can I talk to? How do I approach them? What are their pain points? Really narrowing all that information down so I can be as specific as possible. So when I find a new client that I want to work with, I have kind of all of my ducks in a row, and it's going to be easiest to work with them. So I'm looking at things like, what's their audience size? What type of products do they possibly want? How are their social medias looking? Am I going to have to go in and do a bunch of work for that already? Or do they already have a team built around that? Their relationships with other organizations, and do they partner with anybody? What does that look like? So trying to calculate all those things, figure out my specific client, kind of my avatar for who I want to work with, and creating a great experience for that exact type of organization. And that's going to allow you to scale a lot more. Most of these types of organizations, the dog shelters come to mind, like there are a ton of them in a bunch of different cities. So if you can figure out exactly how to work with one, usually you can just go to the next city or even get word of mouth to work with the next one and just provide a great opportunity. And a lot of the questions that they're going to ask, can I have the specific dog product? You can say, yes, we actually can provide that. And it's not going to be, let me try to figure that out again. So that's kind of the three different phases. One, getting your feet wet, just learning. Two, when you have things figured out a little bit better, doing jobs for word of mouth reference. I mean, still getting paid and structuring it well, but focusing on that word of mouth, getting more people to know about what you're doing. And then three, scaling your business by being specific, which is kind of what we've done with print on demand in general, for the organic traffic, I should say. Being super specific is always worked for us. So I'm doing the same thing for the clients in phase three, just being as specific as possible and really trying to create a great opportunity for me and for them, and a great experience for everyone involved. So I'm going to stop there. My voice is actually starting to go again, but hopefully you can see that this is something I'm pretty passionate about. This is probably one of the longer videos that we've put out inside of this case study series, but it's because this is something that I am moving my business towards, my personal business, and what I'm spending a lot of time and thought doing, because like I said, it's something I'm passionate about. It's definitely where my heart is at, and I'm really enjoying getting to put more time and effort and energy into this. So yes, I'm using Shopify for a lot of the back end of this, but that doesn't mean that there's not also a lot to learn about kind of the front end of this as far as how am I presenting this opportunity to new clients. So if you guys are excited about this, please leave a like on this video, comment down below so I can see your guys' names. I've had a lot more people reaching out to me recently, and it's just encouraging to get to talk about this thing more, to have a better name for it, calling it print on demand fundraiser instead of just working with local businesses, which can mean so many things. And there's just a lot of knowledge all coming together at one time. And I think this is something that a lot of people could do and help a lot of other organizations out there, which is very exciting to think about. So I'm going to be talking about this more after this case studies series, but you definitely having your guys' support in the form of likes and comments and even subscribing to the channel if you want to see more content like that helps us out so much. So I'm going to say thank you for now. The next couple of videos will be coming out about the case studies again. The very next one that I'm going to do is going to be specifically about this theater company that I helped out, what the numbers looked like, what the timeline looked like, all of those things. But until that video, I'll see you guys around.